Welcome to Tips Over Tea. This is season 2. I am so thrilled to have the opportunity to have great conversations with some amazing people. And I have the opportunity to hang out with you guys again, my guests. Make sure you have your tea, whether it be hot or cold, for the Tips Over Tea. And make sure you have your notebook so you can take plenty of notes. And if you're so inclined, bring a friend or two to join you. For now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Tips Over Tea. I am so excited to welcome back Mr. Ren Jones to the show. Ren, thank you so much for being here.
Man, it's been a long time, Nikki.
Yes.
Like years have passed since the last time I was here.
Yeah.
We were just chatting about it before the show, but I'm so excited. I'm excited to see if we can get back into that flow of discussion because we were participating in groups together on Clubhouse the last time that we did this, and it's been a while since we talked. So I'm ready to be challenged. I've got some information I think will be helpful, and I'm excited to give some tips over tea. You see what I did there?
I see what you did there. So perfect. Thank you. Yeah, it has been a while, but when we reconnected, it was just like time has not passed. So I love that
That's right.
about the relation and the connection that we have.
Yes.
I'm excited because what we're going to talk about today, a lot of women come to me and ask questions about. So it's
Mhm.
really one, I love that you're a male and you're able to guide females in this
Yeah.
area. So this just jumping into it. Um, and look, I'm umming, but
Yeah.
the transition we were talking about, the transition for women, like mid life, after 30s into their 40s, the types of things they need to consider fitness wise.
Mhm.
So let's start there. One, where, because at one time you were working with ladies over 30, right? Is that
Yes.
where? Okay.
Yes.
And did you transition into 40s, or you
Yes.
doing okay?
So
Tell me
here's
that story.
that's a great question. It's a good
Mhm,
story because I came into the business working with everyone, and when I say the business, for those that don't know, I'm talking about personal training. Specifically, now I'm an online personal trainer, and I started online training in 2014,
mhm,
which is unusual because nobody knew what online training meant in 2014.
mhm,
Really, it
mhm,
really took off. Obviously, 2020 pandemic, shut down gyms, et cetera, et cetera. But in my case, what happened, Nikki, is I just kept living.
mhm,
And I started this business at 39,
mhm,
just a month or two before I turned 40. And here I am 10 years later in 2024. I'm 50, the
mhm,
big 50.
mhm,
But so too are most of my peers, most of my clients, even clients that started out with me sort of in their mid 30s
mhm,
that have stuck around for half a decade or in some cases more.
mhm,
Well, now they're going through this transition. So it kept creeping into conversation with existing clients.
mhm,
As I was aging, the population that I was serving was aging. Thing I know that you know about me is that I don't like to not have the answer to the question.
mhm,
I want to have a good answer. I want to have an evidence based, empathetic answer to the question. And
mhm,
like you said, some of your friends around you are just casually asking these questions. Well, for me, as an online personal trainer, the only questions that I ever get really are about exercise, nutrition, etc., body composition.
mhm,
And women were throwing these questions at me that less than I felt less than educated on a lot of the subjects. So I went and got some certifications. I
mhm,
started with a client who was based out of Canada,
mhm,
and she's sort of a nomadic client. So she went from Canada to Los Angeles to Mexico, back to Canada, and now she's in Mexico again. And she was, I believe, at the time we started working together, she was 52 years young.
Mhm.
And she was frustrated when she came to me, and just I started initially seeking solutions for her,
Mhm.
right? Because I just wanted to answer her questions as best I could. And I was consulting Dr. Google,
Yep.
Nurse YouTube, just trying to piece things together.
Yeah.
And then I got a hold of some books.
Mhm.
One book was called Menopocalypse,
Mm.
by an awesome English lass. Her name is Amanda Thebe. I think
Mhm.
Amanda's in her 50s now. And I read another book. It's called Next Level. This one was by Dr. Stacy Sims, and it was also about menopause transition. I read a third book called Menopause Manifesto by
Mhm.
Dr. Jen Gunter, which
Mhm.
was more so of a clinical book.
Mhm.
Quite frankly, it was not an easy read for me because she's a
Mhm.
gynecologist.
Mhm.
I was having trouble with some of the medical information in the book.
Mhm.
Just sort of kept reading through it for better understanding. Her book is a little bit more, it leans a little bit more towards socioeconomic, geopolitical things also. I think
Mhm.
that's why she calls it a manifesto, the
Got it.
prevalence of the patriarchy,
Yeah.
uh, you know, uh, difficulty for women advocating for themselves in
Yeah.
medical situations. So there's a lot of that to it. But reading those books, and then that got me really well informed. And lo and behold, courses started to pop up.
Mhm.
So I took all the courses that started to pop up. Menopause 2.0 course from Dr. Stacy Sims. There's an organization called MedFit, and they do sort of medical slash fitness based coursework.
Yeah.
I took their course for menopause. Girls Gone Strong is an organization that supports women in fitness and nutrition, etc. And they also have certification courses. I'd taken a course previously through Girls Gone Strong when I was working with women that were in their 30s,
Mhm.
and it was level one certification. It was a certification for coaching and training women specifically, a women's coaching specialist,
Mhm.
just taking into account the differentiation in lifestyle habits, physical differentiation between women and men. And then they came out with the menopause course, and because I'm an acquaintance of the head woman in charge there, her name is Molly Galbraith, she asked me to participate in her menopause course, the Girls Gone Strong course. So I'm the only gentleman that you'll see in that course. Any trainers or coaches out there that might consider taking their menopause course, you'll see me pop in for about 4 minutes. It's my acting debut. I'm asking questions in my own kitchen. I'm still waiting on my daytime Emmy to arrive for that performance. I know you know what I'm talking about, Nikki, because you're working on some acting yourself.
Yes.
So we can join SAG together if you're
Yes.
not already in it.
I'm not yet.
Get our get our SAG after card. So
Yes.
so that was the natural transition of me getting to working with
Yeah.
women in this menopause transition, was just me being in the business,
Mhm.
trying to serve my clients the best that I could,
Mhm.
and quite frankly, me aging.
Mhm.
So that's a great question. That's how I got to this spot. That's my story, Nikki, and I'm sticking
Stick
to it.
to it.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I'm not surprised that that's how you ended up here because you really everything I've learned and seen about you, you take care of your people that
Yeah.
you work with, and I can completely appreciate that.
I try
Um,
to.
yeah, I you just the way you go about like the very intentional. Yes, I want to be able to answer this question. And
Yes.
you don't just like I don't know, and you don't just stop at one point. You dig deeper because you're trying to actually understand it so that you can relay it in a way that
Yes.
she can use it and implement things that you teach. So what are some of the things that you have found need to be considered as we're starting that
Yeah.
transition? I know you could speak on fitness and nutrition, right? So
Yes.
I'll let you start. Let's start with fitness first. What's some things that should be taken into consideration?
I tell you, the first thing is and this may not be exactly what you expect my answer to be, but the first thing is allowing allowing a natural process and transition to occur, like, because
Mhm.
because of the way society works, and
Mhm.
because of how pervasively society has attempted to brainwash generations of women.
Mhm.
One of the initial challenges with the physical aspect of menopause is sort of the death of the previous avatar,
Mhm.
right? The
Mhm.
death of the mourning the previous version,
Mhm.
because this woman is it's really an evolution is what it is, but because of the way society works and because of so much, because we have such a deep anti-aging campaign for women, particularly in Western culture,
Yeah.
there's an initial mourning of the previous version of self.
Yeah.
And that's one of the first things that I had to learn to deal with as a cisgendered heterosexual male who's never going to go through this. How do I properly support? I don't have the experience. It's
Yeah.
not shared in that way. And what I had to realize is I operate with sort of a seesaw of empathy, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And the way that I think that seesaw works, in my imagination, if the side with experience is low,
Mhm.
right, the seat on the side of having a shared experience is low, and conversely, the empathetic side of the seesaw has to be high. And
Mhm.
I think those are the two sides interact in any situation where you're trying to interact with, relate to,
Mhm.
certainly coach another human. I've got to be able to deploy enough empathy to offset the other side of the seesaw where I lack the experience.
Mhm.
And I think that the empathy side can never be lower than the experience side. So at best, the seesaw is even.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
I know more, if I have a greater shared experience, I just never want my experience to get higher than the empathy side
Yeah.
of the equation.
Yeah.
Right. I need to be as empathetic as experienced at all times.
Mhm.
So it was the first thing for me with the physical aspect of it, the fitness aspect of it,
Mhm.
was helping these clients understand that aging doesn't make you less than,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's no I understand the mourning process of the previous version, but that
Mhm.
version is gone and you have this new wonderful version to embrace. It's the it's the unaware caterpillar going into the chrysalis,
Mhm.
right? To
Mhm.
emerge as a butterfly. Like there's something on the other side of it. I've
Yeah.
worked with enough women now to understand that as they're going through that perimenopause to menopause, menopause is just one day, technically the 12th month of not having had a menstrual cycle,
Mhm.
into postmenopause, which is every day after, they're going to experience there's a clearing after
Mhm.
they walk through that wooded area.
Mhm.
And it is postmenopause where things start to normalize a little bit, where you find that you've got greater clarity, where you find that you give less than zero. I'm not going to say the word, uh, but there's an awakening that happens on the other side. Societally, we only talk about the arduous journey
Yeah.
of getting through to that other side. So that's really the first thing for me, helping the client realize that on some days your capacity may no longer match your ability.
Mhm.
I know you used to do these things. I know you've done these things in the past. I know this is what you did before, but let's respect the capacity of the day and not compare it so closely to any previous ability, because some days, particularly in the perimenopausal phase,
Mhm.
which can start in the mid 30s, some
Mhm.
days you're just going to be wiped out,
Mhm.
exhausted in a way that you've never experienced, exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't help. Some days you're going to be achy, right?
Mhm.
We talk about the musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause, and the achiness that's often misdiagnosed as fibromyalgia,
Mm.
which is really just a withdrawing estrogen and progesterone that has ensured your muscle and your bone and your joints up until the time that they start to fluctuate and withdraw. So having a contingency plan
Yeah.
is probably A1 for your exercise routine at this point. You've got to think a little bit more critically, and we've got to step away from the need to push our bodies, right? You
Mm.
push through, push, you know,
Mhm.
we see all the mantras. You can cry, you can sweat, you can bleed, but you can't quit. Never miss a Monday, you know,
Right.
like go big or go home.
Yep.
That's great in your 20s and your 30s, maybe. At this point, the body's just not quite as stress resilient. So
Yeah.
the first thing is just respecting that capacity, respecting today's ability, respecting today's body. And from there, I start leaning heavily on strength training.
Mhm.
Um, and there are three really challenging physical physical things that we need to be really aware of
Mhm.
as women go through this transition.
Mhm.
I know we often get sidetracked on stuff like abdominal fat, and I get it.
Yeah.
We get sidetracked on the summer body, and I get that. Like, I respect the autonomy. I don't know what it's like to exist in a body that changes that much in that short a period of time. I'll never have that experience. So I wholeheartedly respect a woman coming to me and saying, "Hey, look, I don't feel like myself. I don't
Mm.
feel comfortable in my clothes right now. I got a whole section of my closet that's got caution tape around it. I can't go in there. It's roped off, right? This
Mhm.
sucks and I'm frustrated."
Mhm.
And I understand that.
Mhm.
Also, though, I've got these big three incidents that your body's lit the fuse for happening. One is age related muscle loss,
Mhm.
sarcopenia, right?
Mhm.
Which starts at 30 and has a tendency to accelerate when the perimenopausal phase happens, that
Mhm.
period where you've not quite reached the end of your menstrual cycle, but things are starting to fluctuate.
Mhm.
And that muscle, that's your long-term savings plan, Nikki. That's your 401k, right? That
Mhm.
muscle is going to allow you to exist in the physical world in the way that you want to. It's going to let you travel, right?
Mhm.
That muscle is going to let you stay independent in your own home.
Mhm.
That muscle is, you know, that muscle is your physical relationship and an enjoyment of your partner, right?
Yeah.
Like all of those things tie in together. The second thing I'm really watching out for is osteopenia,
Yeah.
and that's age related bone loss.
Yeah.
And that's the fragility that we saw in Mama or Big Mama or Abuela,
Yeah.
right? Where she
Mhm.
fell and fractured something and she
Mhm.
never made it out of the hospital again. She was never
Mhm.
able to live in her own home again. So I'm looking out for that. And for
Mhm.
that, I want some jump training. I'd like to get a little impact. If you could play some hopscotch,
Mhm.
if you could double dutch, right?
Mhm.
Any of
Mhm.
those things, just a little impact on those bones
Yeah.
so that they reform and remodel because I don't want you brittle, right? I
Yeah.
don't want you fragile. And then the third one, which is the one that my mother interacted with, is the cardiovascular disease.
Mm.
Now, we know that mostly melanated people in Western culture, and almost specifically in the United States, women of color already have sort of an insurance for cardiovascular issues, high blood pressure and stroke and things like that. But we also know that in that perimenopausal phase, we have a marked increase in the possibility of a cardiovascular incident. My mother was 60,
Mhm.
postmenopausal, when she had a massive stroke that debilitated her for the
Mm.
last 17 years of her life. And I don't want that for my clients. So I'm really looking at strength training to preserve that muscle. That's your mobility, your freedom, your 401k, a little bit of jump training, impact training.
Yeah.
It could be pickleball, it could be basketball, it could be tennis, it could be intentional plyometrics like jump training
Yeah.
to make sure that we keep those bones sturdy. I
Mm.
advise women over 40 to get a DEXA scan if they can, That's just going to give you an indication of how strong or brittle your bones are, because that's a great point in time to start addressing it.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at good cardiovascular conditioning, whether it's something as mild as walking or a gentle swim, or it's something as intense as high intensity interval training or sprint interval training.
Mhm.
These are the things that I'm looking at for the woman that's in this midlife spectrum, and I'm sort of trying to get her to come away from things like, and I'm going to get hate mail for saying this. I'm trying to get her away from things like that F45 training, Orange Theory fitness, the
Yeah.
less meals stuff at the gym, the group classes where you have some weight, but it's not heavyweight and you're jumping around,
Hmm.
only because that usually doesn't give enough muscle stimulus
Hmm.
to create the desired result,
Hmm.
and because it can raise stress hormones if you're not properly fed. And I know a lot of women, Generation X and older, like me, they came up in a time where the idea of fitness was eat as little as possible and move as much as possible.
Hmm.
Have your shake for breakfast,
Yep.
right? Your shake for lunch, and a sensible meal.
Yes.
Or eat Special K 2 times a day and then have a sensible meal. And that methodology is ushering women from diet culture into sick culture. And
Hmm.
I know what an opponent you are of that type of medical culture, uh, and the prevalence of heavy pharmaceuticals. And I know that you're a prevention person,
Yes.
not more so than you know, let's over medicate,
Yes.
over indulge in the healthcare system.
Yes.
So that that's a long answer to a very simple question, but that's sort of where I am in terms of the exercise part of it,
Yeah.
particularly for that population, because a lot of these things that hang over from diet culture
Hmm.
just sort of filter into menopause culture now, and women are finding themselves being gaslit the same, or I don't know if it's gaslit or gaslighted, the same way they were through their teens and 20s
Yep.
and 30s. Now, so too, it's menopause culture gaslighting them, uh,
Hmm.
with things that aren't solutions, things that are more likely to compromise their health in the long run. So
Yeah.
I'm really concerned about that.
Yeah, I am too. It's with the internet, there's so much information. It's like
Yes.
hard to decipher what to believe.
Yes.
And if you don't have the critical thinking, you don't know like where you would have to do a lot of research to
Yes.
recognize like where the similarities are and what might possibly be true. So
Yes.
it's good to have someone who is an expert that you trust and who they have your best interest at heart, which is why I
Absolutely.
have you on this show.
Thank
Um,
you very much.
you're welcome. I appreciate that you do think strategically in that way, that you recognize it's not just about, it's like why you're lifting the weights. It's not just
Yes.
you need to lift weights. It's why. It's one of the things that we, especially in the Western, have a hard time doing is seeing beyond today, right? So
Yes.
I've said it before. I'm like my today is investing in my 80-year-old self. I want my 80-year-old
Absolutely.
self to appreciate how I've
Absolutely.
been behaving all this time. And when it's just hard when you don't really see that it's serving your future self. It's just like
Right.
I feel like I'm just doing this thing. But the beautiful thing is, if you as long as you keep doing it, your future self won't even have to be like, why didn't I?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
That's a great statement. And I have so many of the women that I work with that will tell me blatantly, I'm training for my old lady body.
mhm,
Right. That's why
mhm,
I'm here. I'm
mhm.
I'm training for my 80-year-old self. And I know that if I do these things now, uh, my health span can be much closer to my lifespan. Because when we talk about health, lifespan, particularly in this country, through the medical lens,
Mm-hmm.
we're rarely talking about quality of life.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and I saw this firsthand,
Mm-hmm.
at 60 years old.
Yeah.
My mother would never drive a car again. She would
Yeah.
never go to the movies again. She would never cook her favorite meal or my favorite meal again, right? She would
Yeah.
never be able to freely go out and get her youngest son a birthday present. Like, she lost all her freedoms at 60
Yeah.
and lived a very, very confined life until 77. Now, we
Mm-hmm.
could say, well, she had a pretty average lifespan, and that's fair to say.
Mm-hmm.
But when 17 years at the end of it
Mm-hmm.
uh, has, when you live that longer portion of your life and confined to your body
Yeah.
and not being able to freely express yourself through your body,
Yeah.
we have to give a little bit better consideration to health span
Yeah.
versus, maybe not versus, but health span in the context of lifespan.
Yeah.
I tell you, like, I would not, and God rest her soul, I don't know how she dealt with it, but I would not want to exist for nearly 2 decades in a way that all my freedoms have been compromised. Like, that's not a dream of longevity for me.
No.
And we can do so much to attenuate that.
Yep.
But again, in the case of working with women who are in midlife, particularly in midlife now,
Mm-hmm.
because they survived that whole 80s things, so much of the decision making in terms of their health is predicated solely on size,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Smaller at any cost.
Yep.
Uh, and the cost of that is a compromise of health span, nine
Yeah.
times out of 10. Uh, and I refuse to weaponize menopause in an effort to fear monger women into hiring me. But I do want them to have some sense of awareness of the larger rocks
Mm-hmm.
in that container of menopause, and how serious. Now, bikini season can be serious too. I understand that, but how serious the situation is, because fundamentally, if we can do the things that preserve your health and keep your strength and keep your mobility and keep you independent, it's very likely that the aesthetics
Yeah.
will take care of themselves.
Right.
Unfortunately, if we dive batshit crazy solely into the aesthetics, usually there's a set of choices that's probably going to compromise our long-term
Mm-hmm.
health.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want to help women sort of negotiate around. And to your point, having someone that has expertise in helping you deal with this can be a big deal. And I want to drop this nugget because this is one of the tips that I want to give over this tea. Um, so I did it again. You see what I did?
You're really
Um,
good.
so one of the things that most women don't know about is the fact that only about 20% of all OBGYNs are going to get any education in menopause. Now, I don't know why medical societies have deemed this so, but it's the truth. And any menopause information is fundamentally an elective, and it's not present at every medical university. Right? Everybody doesn't even have
No
access to it.
sense.
It sounds crazy. Like,
It
it's
does sound.
crazy to me because I wonder what medical communities think happens to women once they reach 40. Like, we just don't treat them anymore. Like, we don't care what happens. Menopause wasn't invented in 2000 during the pandemic, right? So that doesn't make any sense to me.
Me either.
But I say that because women are very likely to go to seek out medical
Yeah.
information, medical help, and
Yep.
get a very well intentioned medical professional who
Yep.
has no idea how to help them,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Um, there is a link. There's an organization. It's called Menopause Society, the Menopause Society.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be called the North American Menopause Society. We should call it affectionately NAMS, but it's just Menopause Society now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to Menopause Society, if you Google it out there, ladies that are listening, there's a function there where you can search for a menopause informed doctor by zip code. You just
Nice.
type your zip code in, and they list all the registered medical professionals that are registered with Menopause Society
Hmm.
to ensure that you're going to get a practitioner that is able to empathetically listen to the holistic situation that you're going through, your stressors,
Hmm.
your lifestyle, whether you're dealing with an ailing or aging parent at the same time dealing with offspring,
Yeah.
your symptoms, having hot flushes or flashes, genital urinary system, vaginal dryness, painful sex, all these things, and be able to encapsulate all of that under the umbrella of menopause,
Yeah.
because medical professionals are trained to look at the one thing,
Yep.
diagnose it, and treat it.
Yep.
And unless they understand holistically that the source of what you're dealing with is the subsequent withdrawal and fluctuation of estrogen and progesterone, you may not get the advice you seek. I'm going to add to that the
Hmm.
layer of women of color
Hmm.
and their already difficult time self advocating in medical situations.
Yeah.
We all know the history of Serena Williams and how she almost lost her life giving birth because medical professionals thought she was overstating her pain. This is
Hmm.
a common theme,
Yep.
particularly with women of color in the context of the medical profession and the self proclaimed. I'm just rambling here. Please, thank you for allowing me this rant. The self proclaimed godfather of gynecology, J. Marion Sims, learned most of his gynecological information by operating on enslaved women in
Hmm.
the absence of any anesthesia because Africans don't feel pain. So
Hmm.
that's the roots of gynecology in the United States. So
Hmm.
these things become increasingly important, even more so, I think, for women of color,
Yeah.
again, who already have some difficult hurdles
Hmm.
in advocating for themselves in medical situations, but that does trickle out to all women. It just seems to be particularly pervasive in the context of women of color. So I just wanted to drop that nugget in there
Appreciate
because
that.
I think it's really important
Yes.
for all women to have access to a menopause informed medical professional. If not, they're likely to be dismissed.
Yeah.
You're likely to get the retaliatory. Oh, it's all in your head
Yeah.
from a medical professional, and I know that how frustrating that can be.
Yep.
I digress.
No, that
Thank
was
you for
that is
allowing
that
me that rant.
was of course. That was very I recently learned about that, and it just infuriates me
Yes.
to no end, but that's another conversation. So I
We're-
appreciate that you shared that because not everybody is aware.
right.
I was literally this I learned about that this year. I'm in my
Hmm.
40s. So
Yeah.
I can imagine that means a lot of people in my age probably did not have no idea. So I'm
No.
glad
No.
you shared that. I'm glad, and we'll put that link in the description too. So I'm glad you
Yes.
shared that. That's very
Yes.
very helpful. It just there's so many things going through my head about like
I know. It's
nonprofit
a
wise.
it's a lot.
It
It's
is.
a lot.
It is. So we'll see where I'm guided on that. Anyway,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that, and we're gonna have to do another episode with the nutrition piece
Yes.
because we went long, but it was really good. So I'm not. It's this. That's I'm no complaints. It was very
I
good
appreciate you.
information. Yeah, absolutely. I really trust that. Just hearing, like, I didn't even know that about GYNs or not necessarily like
It's
hormones and
crazy.
menopause. Like I knew that about docs with nutrition. I learned
Yeah.
that when I became a health coach. I did not know that about the hormone piece of
Crazy.
it.
Crazy.
Yeah, so
I just,
that
I just don't know what I just there's so much to learn, and I get that. They're
mhm,
well intentioned, and I get that. There are corporate constraints all across medicine in our
mhm,
country, and
mhm,
I also get that. But I just don't get what they plan to do with women who are over 40
mhm,
if the life expectancy is to late 70s, early 80s,
That's a long time.
then what's the plan for the other 40-45 years of a woman's life if nobody's being professionally trained on how to pick up on and isolate and
Mhm.
treat these symptoms of menopause? There's far too few practitioners that have the information. And then there's a sea of women, literally more than half of the Earth's population, that are going to definitely encounter this unless they
Mhm.
pass away early, heaven
Mhm.
forbid.
Mhm.
But again, I digress. I'm not going to get us started again. I know we're over time, and I can keep going, but I
I
don't need to.
I can too. We'll
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
That'll be another episode. What I
Just a
hear is,
reason, just a
yeah,
reason to have another
it
episode.
is.
Just
I like
now,
it.
now you
I
have to
see what
invite
you
me
did
back.
there. I know. I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Very well played.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm proud. I feel good about it too. I'm proud of myself.
I
I'm
love
not
it.
ashamed at all.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Ren, for some very, very good and helpful nuggets there. I trust that you're gonna have some women like being more intentional, right? With that,
Yes.
because we assume that because they're wearing a white coat, they've gotten all this different training and like we don't necessarily assume a doctor has nutrition knowledge so much because
Right.
that's a nutritionist. But we don't
Right.
have someone who's a hormonal specialist
Right.
usually. So we expect that the doctors know about all that. So anyway, I digress as well. Thank you
Indeed.
for those tips. Those are very important. And you may have saved someone's life truly just for giving them that information. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll do another episode, part 2 of Ren.
I love it.
Yes.
I'm back.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this week's episode. I know that you got a lot of good nuggets. If you know someone in this age range that could use this information, please make sure you share this interview, this video, and help change and give a better quality of life post-menopause,
Mhm.
during perimenopause, and all of that. So thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next time. Ciao for now.
Ciao.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. Hope you enjoyed the show and got a lot of good information. Be sure to like, subscribe, tap the bell so you know when we air again. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Enjoy the rest of your week.